Welcome to the Everyday Educator podcast, where we explore what it means to learn alongside our family every day. We want to encourage one another as we ponder the delights and challenges that make homeschooling the adventure of a lifetime. Whether you are just beginning your homeschooling journey or deep into the daily delight of family learning, we think you'll enjoy thinking and learning along with us. But don't forget, although this online community is awesome, you'll find even closer support in a local CC community. So go to classicalconversations.com and find a community near you today. Welcome, guys. I'm your host today. I'm Lisa Bailey, and I've got some great guests with me today to answer all of your questions. You'll leave with all of your questions answered. Okay, now they're running away. I'm not really promising that, but I will promise you that we will explore some topics that sometimes are sensitive for parents and learners at home. And we'll be very honest about what we've learned along the way and about what we are learning. I have with me today Karin Carpenter. Karin, tell people how many children you have or are homeschooling. And you can count grandchildren if you want to.
I have 4 children, all of whom are finished with the homeschooling part of their education journey and are farther into learning. I have 3 boys and a girl, and I also have 2 beautiful grandchildren.
All right. So Karin has got a wealth of experience in shepherding young minds and hearts, some of whom learn a little differently, and we'll explore that together. And Courtney Bradshaw. Courtney, tell everybody how many children you have and where they are along the homeschool journey.
Sure. I have 7 children.
Woohoo!
Yeah. One is in her first year of college, and the youngest is a toddler. So he is not quite formally homeschooling, but he is at home.
Yes.
And the other 5 are currently schooling in my home as we speak.
That is very cool. That probably even as we speak, outside a door somewhere, learning is going on. Well, I am really glad to have you guys. I have known both Karin and Courtney for a number of years, and I knew that they would have some insights as we explore what it looks like to learn at home with a bunch of kids, but also what is it like to learn at home when one or more of your children learn a little bit differently than the others. Some of you guys have some kids that have neurodivergent diagnoses, and then you have some kids that you just know they need the material presented a little differently, or they need different kind of support in order to take in or enjoy as much of the learning as some of your other kids. And so we want to explore that. I want parents to know that homeschooling really can be for everybody. It doesn't mean that you are out there by yourself or that you are the only parent who's trying to navigate school with a child who just learns in a different way. So let's jump in. Let's just jump in. Karin, I want to ask you, when did you suspect that learning in what people might say is a conventional way was sometimes a challenge for any of your kids?
Well, I would say that my second son, Andrew, was the most challenged of my kids to learn along the conventional route. He is fairly severely dyslexic. And so I didn't know that probably until he was about 5, when he was really struggling to recognize his letters. But you still, as a mom, think, well, maybe it's not that. My brother was severely dyslexic, and so I had watched that, and I was really hoping that wasn't going to be our journey. But I did see that he was really struggling and that he rubbed his eyes a lot. That was one of my clues that this was hard on him, that he was struggling. I knew he did not take the same journey that my firstborn did in learning to read. It was a long, arduous process. And so I gave him a lot of space to work very slowly and to not move at a decent pace, what I would
Right.
consider at a decent pace.
Right.
And that even as slowly as we were going, and writing was a tremendous hardship for him, we still were continuing to lag behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you mentioned that rubbing of the eyes. That is a sign that I never heard anybody mention before. I was going to ask you what I wanted to ask you both. So, Courtney, you be thinking about this. What were some of the signs that you saw or that you observed or attended to that one of your children needed some extra help, or that you needed to find a different style or method or timetable for learning? And so that rubbing the eyes, is that generally an early sign, or it just was for your family?
It was for Andrew, partially because he had some issues with his vision. So we had to actually
Okay.
pursue vision therapy. Not he had 20/20 vision, but his muscles around his eyes were not working together to make his eyes move together. And so it was painful. All his muscles would get
Wow.
sore as he would try
Yeah.
to read. And so, but I didn't know that for quite a while. And I think one of the other things that really showed me that there was going to be an issue is he is a very even-tempered child, and he's naturally extremely curious. But put him in a situation where he was looking at letters and numbers, and all that went out the window. He became frustrated, and he became tired, and he didn't want to know. And it was just a big change in his personality when we sat him in the chair.
This is so helpful. I have grandchildren. I have a grandson who's almost 3.5. So he's very interested in reading, and he'll hold a book and babble out the story as he remembers it. But I have thought before, how are young moms, how are grandmas supposed to know that this child has an issue that could be helped if it was addressed earlier? So I really appreciate you offering those personality changes, rubbing the eyes, vision, checking the vision is one of the first things. Courtney, do you have dyslexic kids or kids that you've had to explore vision therapy for?
Yes, I've had both, but I don't know that they are related, their vision. But I have two with who are diagnosed with dyslexia, and their problems or issues, the things that they struggle are different with their dyslexia. So
Okay.
and this is something I didn't realize until we started seeking help for it, that it manifests itself differently. It's not just about reading, or it's language in general and how they process.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
I have one, and this was where my son, we noticed he had trouble reading, but more than that, it was that he had trouble communicating what he knew. And so he has trouble with his phonetic memory. And so like he can read a paragraph and not remember what he read. And so that's part of his dyslexia diagnosis. And we had his vision checked, we had things, and his vision was fine. But then my youngest daughter, she had issues with her vision that we were not aware of until she was about 5. It was as if one eye was not being used by her brain at all.
Oh.
But they were pointed straight, and so we didn't see that it was not used.
It wasn't a lazy eye or something that you could see a problem with.
But it was, and then her eye doctor said, you were about to start having trouble with school, because her other eye was starting to have trouble because it was being used so much. And so we handled her vision first, but then she still struggled with reading. And so I asked to have her evaluated for dyslexia as well. And she does have dyslexia, But hers, identifying letters, but her writing is very difficult.
So dysgraphia is part of what she struggles with as well. Looking back, and see, I hear lots of parents who say, well, we finally discovered what the problem was. But for a lot of us, it's just trial and error. Like you said, Courtney, nothing looked different in her eyes. So you had no reason to suspect there was a problem. As you look back now, were there earlier signs that you missed, or that, your pediatrician missed, or nobody was looking for a learning difficulty, but when you look back, you can see, oh, that was a clue that I missed?
Oh, that was absolutely the case with my son with dyslexia. But he also has a different background than some of my others. He came to us through foster care at almost 4. And so there a lot of what we walked through with him was just helping him to begin learning these things. Like he hadn't been exposed to things like colors and numbers and none of those things. So a lot of it, we just felt like he was behind because he just did not have someone
some encouragement.
No books being read to him, things like that. And so we gave him more time. He was 9 before he was diagnosed with dyslexia, because I just kept trying to give him more and more time. And then with my, we had several people who said, well, you probably should just put him in school.
Oh,
providers who said things like that. And so I got to where I was afraid to ask and just thought, well, they're going to blame me for what he doesn't know.
Wow.
And so it took some time to find people that we trusted, and really people in our community with CC who were experiencing the same things. And then the more they said, these are the things, I said, he checks every box for dyslexia. Like he uses, there are some things with the checklists that they say, things like using very indefinite pronouns for everything. So we were going to call it that instead of naming what it is. And so there was a lot of those things. Forgetting what we knew yesterday, that was the really frustrating thing for us, because we thought he just didn't want to do it. But he really forgot. He really could not
hold that skill.
Get it out. Yeah. And I don't even know if it's so much that he couldn't remember as he couldn't communicate it, the things that he did remember. And there were so many things that he struggled with that I said, that this is that, right? This is the thing.
Right. Right. Wow. So what kind of research, especially Courtney, as you were getting some unhelpful responses, just send them to an expert, and you were committed to homeschooling. Karin, did you do research on dyslexia or research on different learning styles? How did you learn to address Andrew's challenges in a way that really helped him?
I think partially having watched my brother go through that, and my mom actually pulled him from the school system when he couldn't read, and went and educated herself through Marva Collins's education of phonics, so that she could teach him to read, because phonics based is the most important way for a educationally challenged child to learn, because it hits all of the sensors. And
that's really helpful to hear.
Super important. Oftentimes these kids, you will notice them early, the tags in their shirts bother them, or if their shoes are tied a little bit wrong, they bother them, or if the sound that you aren't hearing is too loud in the background, they have trouble pushing background noises to the back. They have trouble figuring out which sensory input should be the one they're concentrating on right now. And so that we do that so naturally that we forget that we're actually hearing the clock that's ticking in the room, but we're pushing it back and not noticing it, but they don't have that skill yet. And so I think having my brother go through that gave my radar was up. I'll say that.
Right.
And I had never heard of vision therapy but my friend Amy Jones had, and she was a special ed teacher. And she said, I think you want to go ahead and look into things. And so I actually had hired a reading tutor because my son, I was very committed not to making his label be who he was. So I never told him
Yes.
that he had learning disabilities. We just
Right.
tried everything under the sun instead. And I
Right.
took a lot of the blame in his little life. I made it sound like it was, Mom just isn't doing this right. I need to find a better way to teach you. We tried
Uh-huh.
whiteboards. We tried, writing in the sand. That worked. We had a black like salt, and we would write letters in the salt because it was sensory. And
Yes.
and I was online looking at some other ways to get things done. And while I was at the tutors one day, she was a hoot. She said, I want you to lie down on the floor and watch his eyes while he tries to read. And his eyes were literally not together and they were hopping all over the
Oh
place.
my
What you have
goodness.
to learn to read is you have to bring them both across, lift, and come back
Right.
across again. And he was so far from being able to do that. He couldn't find the next line of text. That was just beyond him. The
Wow.
reason we started therapy when we did, he was 9, was because his sister, who was 3 years younger than he was reading chapter books.
Mhm.
And so that became an issue for him and his self-image. And once it was a problem for him, we kind of put a lot of our other stuff on hold. And it was a year that we really just concentrated on getting him reading. He didn't worry about math or handwriting or anything. So like, we are going to learn to read this year. And it was like reading boot camp. We did all sorts of things, flashcards and jumping and all sorts of things that were recommended to us. But I do think you get some warnings that this kid doesn't handle distractions well, or this kid doesn't
Yes.
handle
It gets
this.
overstimulated easily.
And my son Andrew could not alternate his feet walking up the stairs. So he had a lot of trouble between
Oh.
left and right hemisphere
Yeah.
activities.
The crossing
Um,
the midline was an issue for
and
him.
so he didn't learn to ride a bike. He didn't like anything that was left, right was very, very difficult for him.
Yeah. These are
But
all great signs for our listeners to be thinking about. And conversely, these are all great ways to practice with your 2 and 3-year-olds. Hop on one foot, hop on another foot, going up and down the stairs, anything that causes you to put your hands from the top of your body to the bottom and from the right side to the left side. All of those things. I mean, it seems like you're just, moving your body to make them tired enough to take a nap. But actually, you are helping to dig neural pathways that will
and
help them.
I think I was in kindergarten when they discovered that if you don't crawl, that you have
Oh,
trouble reading. So the alternate crawling, the motor
yes.
skill of that, and there were kindergarten teachers that were teaching their children to crawl in their kindergarten classrooms because they were trying to get that midline cross changed. So if you see your child really struggling to learn this, that might be an indicator that you need to work on it a little harder. But I will say, my son came to me in college and said, Mom, I think that my cousin Patrick might be dyslexic. And I said, yeah, I think you're right. I think he is. He goes, boy, that must be really hard.
He never
And
realized that
I was like,
he
you are
had a
21 years
learning
old. I said,
challenge.
well, you're dyslexic. And he was just shocked because we didn't use the word and we didn't
Right. No
label.
label. Mhm.
So that was super important to me that he not be his
Yeah.
diagnosis. And also, he, in some ways, is my brightest child.
Mhm.
Super good at attending. He can hyper focus like nobody I've ever met.
Wow.
And if he offers information, it's gospel. It's vetted. He knows what he's talking
Right.
about. My other kids still to this day do not argue with him. If he starts talking about something that happened in the Galapagos Islands, he's right. He
Okay.
knows. He's read it. He's looked at it. He's a super good attender. Like if he will
Yeah.
be able to do that in a way that none of my other kids can do. And my daughter, who's ADHD, she can hyper focus too, but she has one of her major issues is if she doesn't see it, it doesn't exist.
Oh,
So if she
yes.
closes the drawers to her dresser, she no longer owns those clothes.
Right. And she just won't consider them as choices.
Yeah. And so we had to navigate that a little bit. So
Yeah.
yeah. And I want to give a huge word of encouragement that my son Andrew has his master's degree and that my daughter with ADHD just finished the LSAT and is headed to law school. So it is not a death sentence by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
You just have to learn a different pathway to get the information in. And sometimes because they've worked harder to learn, the way they learn is more solid. They don't have the ability to pump and dump the way I learned school, like learn your vocabulary words, spit them back out, and then you don't have to think
they're
about
gone.
Yep. They do not have that skill. They don't have it. So they have to know it in order for it to own it.
Want credit for all your learning as a homeschooling parent? Classical Conversations is excited to announce the launch of our new accredited graduate certificate in classical studies. This new 12 credit hour graduate certificate in classical studies is launching through Southeastern University. The program features a deeper dive into the trivium with PhD guided discussions of core texts of classical Christian education. This is perfect for homeschooling parents wanting an academic credential and a pathway to our full master's degree. It includes small cohort sizes with a 22-seat capacity and dedicated SEU sections for personalized attention. This program acknowledges your prior classical education work while advancing skills for God's purposes. Interested? Register today to secure your spot in this transformative educational experience. Go to icc.regfox.com/MA-certificate. That's ics.regfox.com/MA-certificate. That is super encouraging, Karin. I feel like I got really teary when you were saying that you were really committed to having your son not live his label, that he was not a dyslexic child of God. He was a child of God who learned however he learned. That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Courtney, when you recognized that your kids needed maybe some different systems to learn by, did you do some research on different instruction methods? Did you teach yourself to provide the learning therapies that they needed?
With some things. So my oldest daughter eventually was diagnosed with ADHD inattentive type. They used to call it ADD, but now it's ADHD. But that was because she advocated for herself to be diagnosed, because I was very similar in that I didn't want a label for her. And we were making accommodations at home, right? So I researched how to different schedules. What are the ways to keep her focused while trying to, how to add in sensory input. I did a lot of that research on my own and just tried to implement those things for her. And they just became part of what we did at our house, like, chore systems and ways to be motivated. But when my adopted children came into my home, there were just needs that I didn't know what to do with. And so we started pursuing outside help. And so
that's wonderful too.
And it became a thing where I said, I need to know what this is.
Yes.
So that I know how to address it appropriately and with the right compassion. And so we ended up with an occupational therapist for my son. One of my sons, he has ADHD. He is not he's one of the three that are not diagnosed with dyslexia. But he has a lot of, he's a sensory seeker, and he needs heavy sensory input. So a lot of the things that Karin, you're saying, we were doing for him anyway, because he needs that sensory input and he needs to know how to do, he just has to be able to regulate himself differently than most. So I needed help with him. And then I finally found a therapist that we trusted and listened well. And then in conversations with her, it was able to lead me to other things that helped with my other children. And so things that I wasn't really sure about, I didn't know about dyslexia. My mother-in-law was a reading coach in a public school system, and she was an amazing help when she was here.
Yes.
To help me to be patient and to take the time that we needed. We did the same thing, Karin, that you said about just taking a year and focusing on reading with him. And so by the time he was in reading therapy, his therapist said, like, I would not have expected him to be where he is.
Right.
He's a 9-year-old who has not been diagnosed yet, but
Yeah.
you have done these things. And so I was able to ask people that I saw walking through the same things. So I didn't necessarily find a specific way on my own. But I was able to find people who were helpful, and they pointed me in the right directions. And then a lot of the things aligned. So they were telling me about how to help with my students with dyslexia, and the sensory input that was needed was what we were already doing for my children with ADHD. And so it was really helpful that it all seemed to work together. It's not exactly the same.
But it folded together, and it helped. What was helping one child was a help to another child as well. I love what y'all are saying about the power of community, and that I think that a lot of parents who notice, we don't want to compare our children to one another. We don't want to compare our children to children of a different family in our community, but we are so human. And when there is something that concerns us, we start looking and we start comparing. And I think it is very human that we sometimes don't want to share what we view as a problem. Whether it's pride, I think a lot of it is Satan, who tries to keep us isolated in our fear.
Yes.
And so I think that you guys are a beautiful testimony of asking friends and using family and making use of professional therapists, and
you
just
do become a student of your own child.
Yes.
That's really one of the things that I learned, was that it is my job to really dive deep into knowing what works for the child. And it's not that different from a child who can't have gluten or a child who can't have milk or dairy. This is just how this son of mine was created. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I used to say to myself when he was 9 and 10 and not getting a lot of things as quickly as I wanted him to, is that he will be a wonderful deacon of his church, because he cares for people deeply and he understands how things go together, and that he will be a deacon much longer than he will be a student in school. And so it was a really good perspective shift for me. Came through a lot of prayer and a lot of tears of, I need to stop getting wrapped around the axle about the fact that he can't tell a P and a B apart.
Right.
That is not an information that he needs to have in heaven. And so I need to stop this. And so it is always helpful to figure out what they actually need. And the more you can learn about how their brains work, the more empathy and the more patience you have with them.
Yes.
And I mean, I will admit I can remember one time having him by the shoulders. He was probably in 5th grade, had him by the shoulders. And I was so frustrated. I explained a concept 6 times and he still didn't get it. And I had to actually pray and let go of his shoulders and walk away, because it wasn't his fault.
Right.
We were not communicating.
Right.
So that constant reminder, he was definitely, his learning disabilities were very definitely something that helped my spiritual walk, because
Yes.
me on my knees a lot. I
Yeah.
remember crying out to the Lord, going, "Okay, Lord, I'm going to give him up to you. If he's a garbage man all his life, he's a garbage man all his life.
As long
You know,
as he knows and loves
he
you, he
knows
can
you
be a
and
garbage
loves
man who loves
you.
Jesus.
I don't care."
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
pride. It was my pride. I come from a family that is very well educated, and
Right.
so it was really my pride that was stepping in the way. And he was a great 9 and 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I was wanting him to be different was my problem.
Right.
Not his problem.
Parenting has got to be one of the most sanctifying experiences of human life.
Absolutely.
Right up there with marriage, you know? It sanctifies us a little bit every day if the Lord continues to work on us, which he always does. Courtney, did your children notice that they learned differently from other of their siblings or other people in their circle of friends? What was that like?
Yeah. My son with dyslexia, his older brother does not have the actual label of this, but would probably be considered gifted. And so there was a lot of comparing of he knows everything and he can spout off all the memory work, or he reads big books and he, is writing all these things. And so there was a little bit of competition, to the point that I waited, and I didn't put them in essentials at the same time. We repeated a year for my younger son, and so that he'll still get 3 full years, but we spent a year working on just reading, and so I didn't want them in there at the same time because he compared himself. But it has actually helped him tremendously that other people have been in our community and in our church have been open about their walk with dyslexia.
Right.
And to be able to see other kids who have the same kids that he thinks are just,
Amazing
people, are the coolest kids on campus.
Right.
And for him to know, hey, they struggle too. Yeah, that's why their mom holds their paper while they read it in community, in the same way that your mom does, because we all have a little bit of extra help. We all want a little help. And it has given him a lot of confidence, knowing that it's not just him and that he's not just one, or that there's not something wrong with him. That and having his sister also walking this journey, he's just seeing that it's okay that I need to learn this a little bit differently. That doesn't make me not smart, or it just I have to learn it differently. And so Dad said the same thing, Karin. Mom is just not sure how to make sure that you understand this, and I need help understanding how to teach this to you. So that you can understand it, and that is the most important thing for you, is that we figure out how to get this to you for you to understand this. So he compared himself a lot, but we're at a good place. But I wouldn't have been there. We wouldn't have been at this place had I not been willing to say we need help, and something's wrong, and not wrong with him, but something is not working here, and I need help. But I think his thoughts about himself would have just continued to sink if we had not been able to find help. I was scared of that.
Yeah.
This daughter, I was scared of the label, and I was, scared of what people think, and I was scared of even don't talk to me about medication. Don't do those things. But just like you said, if it was his heart, or if it was his, I wouldn't keep them from wearing glasses.
Yes.
They need. And
we need to remove the stigma of
Yes.
learning challenges. Karin, I know, I mean, you've already shared that all of your kids have graduated and have gone on to other things, so that Andrew now has a master's degree. And so, when you knew that he was dyslexic, that he had trouble reading, that he had trouble processing information, were you looking ahead to the challenge years with CC and thinking, and how are we going to read all those books and write all those papers and do all that memorizing and have a debate and do a lab journal? And oh my word, did that occur to you?
It wasn't specifically challenged because it hadn't come to my area of the country yet when my son was a student. So, but we did a lot of audiobooks. And that was just part of his natural and normal behavior, was to do audiobooks. Mm-hmm. In the younger years, if he was reading for content, I read first and highlighted the things that he needed to know. He would get those keywords.
Yep.
Because there's different kinds of reading. That there's reading that you're reading just to be informed. There's reading that you're reading for the fun of reading and the story,
right? And to hear the language
and history, you have to glean. Yeah. And so I read first, and I underlined some of the things that I thought he should glean. We learned to color code pretty early, earlier than my other kids did. And then we did a lot of audio processing. He told me the story after he listened to it, because I had to know it was in there, that he wasn't just playing that video and his audio in his room and playing with his truck.
Right.
And so we did that. And then whenever there was an opportunity to speak out loud, he did not enjoy that, partially because he couldn't read, and that was so frustrating to him. I would coach him through that and have cards ready for him that would be words that he could handle, and he could look down and read them. So basically I took the vocabulary that was and shrunk it down for him when he was younger. Now, as he got older, and when he did some audio to text, like stuff, that kind of writing, but that's frustrating too, because it doesn't exactly say what you're saying, and then you have to repeat and all that kind of thing. So a lot of times what I would do is I would have him talk and I would type while he would type. But then after that was finished, I would make him write an outline. That I felt like there had to be some writing, there had to be some of his own work involved. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of navigating him to feel like it wasn't mom doing his work, because that matters when they're 13 and 14. That's embarrassing.
I was going to say that. Yes.
So learning some ways that he could do his own work, but that it could be less frustrating to him. I had a couple of kids in my challenge as directors, in my challenge classes, that were dyslexic or had other learning differences. And we all just learned. One of them couldn't look up at the whiteboard and transfer the information to the paper. And
to the notebook.
So what I would always print out what we were writing, or I'd take a picture of what we had written and I would email it to his mom to make sure that he got the real notes. He still wrote what was on the board. What he wrote was not what was on the board. Mm-hmm. And so mom wouldn't have been able to figure out anything of it in challenge, so I would always take a little snapshot of what we'd written and usually write her a little note of this is the connections that we saw. But in the moment, those kids are really insightful. Often they're the ones that are making really good connections and going deeper in, because they have to process so much harder than a kid who just skims. Mm-hmm. They hear those really deep connections and they'll start saying things like, well, that's just like, I was like, wow.
Oh, well, yes. Now that you mention it, it is.
You mention it. That's a really good connection. And I would say that I do know that I had some friends that were worried about this learning disability in high school, and what was I going to do about it then?
Right.
That was going to be the hardest thing I'd ever done.
Right.
And I cannot imagine adding the emotional stress of a public school system or even a private school system and being that different onto a child that's already feeling that stressed. And so on my days when I looked out at the big yellow school bus that would have taken my children away and left me have my day all to myself, it was Andrew that kept me home.
Yes.
He is so sweet, so dear, so kind. If I sent him off to the school system, they would chew him up and spit him out.
and never see the gold
Yeah.
that's in him.
Exactly.
Have you ever wished that you could just help your student continue the momentum that they started in classical conversations in a college environment? Guess what? Judson College is exactly what you've been looking for. This semester, Judson College is sponsoring the Everyday Educator, and we are so excited to partner with them because we really believe that they have exactly what our students could need for the next leg of their education journey. Let me tell you more about it. So Judson College really values Christian education, and they exist to equip students who want to give their lives for the cause of Christ, wherever he might call them. So that means that they're not just helping students who want to go into vocational ministry, but also students who want to live in the marketplace. Judson College also has a specific community plan for their students. They have smaller class sizes that allow students to have individual relationships with the faculty, and that also helps them to get the attention that they need so that they can learn and grow as professionals. Outside of the classroom, they also have what they call the house system, and that provides a vibrant student-led community where students make lifelong friendships and participate in house competitions and experience deep community all the way from freshman year to graduation. Lastly, something I found absolutely fascinating was that they have a classical emphasis. So they have a great books course, which is required for every single degree in undergrad. And in that course, they focus on the history of human ideas through a biblical worldview. And that allows the students to develop as readers, writers, and researchers as they grow as committed followers of Christ. If you want to find out more about Judson College, visit judsoncollege.com/distinctives. Let's get back to the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I so much, listeners, want you to hear these mamas' hearts to love the child that the Lord gave them and find a way inside with the Lord's help to release the person that is in there, the learner that is in there, that the Lord wants to do. And there are ways to accommodate a classical Christian education to every type of learner. And the home environment is the perfect environment to do that.
Absolutely.
Karin, I had, as a challenge tutor through the years, I've had ADHD kids, I've had dyslexic, dysgraphic kids. I've had several kids through the years with Tourette's who have different triggers and who have different. I had one student who, if he ever needed to write an outline or something, his hand would literally freeze and he could not write. He was a great thinker and, as you said, made all kinds of connections, but there was something about getting it through his fingers. He just froze up. Now, if he was at home and he had lots of time and could move around, he was able to do it. There are all kinds of accommodations that can be made in the loving communities that Classical Conversations leads us into. Courtney, you have kids that have learning challenges that don't learn like other kids, but there are lots of things that our learning challenged kids do just like all the other kids. What are things that your family still did all together, even though some of them had to have different ways of writing or reading or sensory?
Yeah, so we continue reading aloud. They can all listen, to books in that way. We might have to move a little more when we're doing that. Our people to move. We continued and have continued all of our regular curriculum. So nobody, except for the 1 year with
Right.
we really just focused on reading. We everyone has they've continued. We've been able to do every part of CC. We tailor certain things, but we can do those together. Let's see, my children who are the right ages for the math map that's been released right now, there's 4 of them doing it. That would be my one who would be considered gifted, 2 of my students with dyslexia, and one who has ADHD.
Right. And they're all able to do it, and you're doing it together.
You're doing it together. And it's actually really helpful because then they have each other to say, hey, oh yeah, that looked like my page. That kind of looks like today. And then we were with foundations, especially, everybody still gives a presentation, and essentials we've learned. So many things, there was really nothing that we couldn't do anymore because of this. We just might have to do it a little bit differently. And really, because like I said, so many things are, I think, just being able to do something with adding in sensory, learning, where we're learning by moving or that runs the gamut of so many different things, and that everybody learns well that way. And so it's not that one has to go and do jumping jacks because he can't learn. It's that we're all going to do jumping jacks.
We're all going to do that because it helps us all in a different way.
Yes. So we maybe had to leave to go to a therapy. We have somebody who came in and helped, but nothing really was taken away from what we were already doing. We were just able to continue on.
Yeah. Karin, I love it that your Andrew got to be a full-fledged grown-up and never realized that he had a disability. He just learned. Everybody learns, and he learned too. And so that's lovely. That
one of the things that I remember doing when they were little and we were reading aloud, was usually when it would happen, is that at first, when I homeschooled, I wanted to recreate the classroom, and they had little desks. And that is just the worst thing for a kid with learning disabilities. And it's not good for any of us, truthfully. But so I remember at one point, my daughter hanging off the couch with her head down, listening while she was listening. And then my Andrew was playing with Legos, and to me, he couldn't be listening and playing with Legos at the same time.
He actually probably couldn't listen unless he was moving.
Attend unless his fingers were moving. We had things called wiki sticks. I don't know if you've ever seen those. You twist them around. They made things, and they would actually kind of illustrate whatever I was doing with their wiki sticks, or clay. Or I hated Play-Doh, so wiki sticks were much better because they cleaned up better. But we did art alongside of a lot of things because my Andrew was pretty artistic. One of the things they say about those kids with some of the dysgraphia and dyslexia is that they see letters as a three-dimensional object. And so they usually will get in the way of the page. So the letters come up and get between them and the page. And so that's fascinating to me. When I discovered that I don't hear audiobooks the same way that my kids do. I have two kids who, when they are listening, they're actually seeing a movie play in their head.
Oh, yeah. And I thought everybody did that. I asked a Challenge B class one time. So when you're reading a story, do you see it happening? And half the class was like, what are you even talking about? Like watching a movie? I'm like, no, there's not really a movie playing, but it's in my head. And they were like, no, that's not a real thing. I thought everybody was like that.
And that's a learning difference, but it's not one that we identify. It doesn't have a label.
Right. Yeah. Right. So what did you guys learn? What has the Lord taught you? What has the Lord taught you as you have learned how to learn alongside your child? What has the Lord taught you, Courtney?
He is still teaching me patience and compassion for my children, see them for who they are. And then, this may seem silly, but just he's broadened my vocabulary and the way I've learned to explain something when they are not sure what a word means, or how to define something. I've had to figure out a better way to say it, or how to ask better questions. It's hard to know. It's hard to know if my son grasps the gospel because he is not able to articulate it well sometimes. Sometimes he is, but if I ask him, to tell me he can't. He'll just repeat things he's heard. And so I've had to learn how to ask questions that will get him to answer what he really believes and what he really thinks. And I've had to learn how to listen differently to him. And I think that's helped me to be a better parent, but a better friend, and better teacher, a better student of, with other people, and a better wife. Just because I need to listen to really what it is that you are asking or what it is that you're saying. It's helped me to do that a little differently
Wow.
than I did before.
That is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Listening to that, it seems like, wow, the Lord gave you a great gift by
Yes.
letting you know these children.
Mhm.
Karin, what's the Lord taught you?
Well, I think big picture, it's humility. I was a good student. It came easily to me. I did the right things. I sat in the right seat. I did all the things so I expected that I went to school to become a teacher. So I thought I had this thing down. No big deal.
Right.
And so the humility of knowing that not only did I not have all the answers, that some of the things I was asking my kids to do were counterintuitive. And so that was one of the things. And then I think the second thing it really taught me is to pull apart the curtain on what is I really can't and what is a bad attitude.
Oh, yes, ma'am. That's great.
And so those two things are very different. And by having them so blatantly exposed in my home all the time, it reminded me of my own self. There are times when I don't want to do things. And is it that I don't want to do it because I don't know how and I'm not done the work to learn it? Or is it because I just flat out don't have a good attitude about it? And you can't dance around that bad attitude. If it really is a sin, then it's a sin.
Right.
And so when I was learning to only come down on the things that were sinful, because that took me a while. I disciplined for things that weren't discipline worthy for a while. I punished for things that my kids were not capable of doing, and that's it's awful.
It's something you repent of.
It is, and by God's mercy, He doesn't do that to us.
Yes.
But when I really learned to examine, this is a heart issue, it exposed my own heart issues in a lot of ways. And so I think that's something that God continues to teach me. I don't teach kids every day at my dining room table, but my kids continue to be different from me in a lot of the same ways. They don't interact with me the way I think they ought to interact with me.
Right. They're not following your script, Karin.
Yes.
How dare they?
So trying to expose my own heart of which is my wicked expectations of being told I'm good and that's what I want out of this. Because I think there was a little part of me that thought that if I parented well, everyone would think I was a wonderful person.
Right.
And that's not the goal. It's not even part of the package.
Right.
So that was a big part. So that's also the part of the humility.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Listeners, I mean, you thought you were coming on just to hear what to do to help your learning challenged kids move through the curriculum and get through it and be okay. And what we have heard are ways that the Lord is dealing with our hearts as we deal with the learning challenges of our children. Karin and Courtney, thank you. You have blessed my heart today. You have given me a lot to think about. And I see the hand of the Lord in your being with us today. Listeners, that's a wrap. That's a wrap for what we're going to share with you today. I really appreciate you guys being here. It is a joy to walk alongside this curious and vibrant community of lifetime learners. If today's episode encouraged you or equipped you in any way, or helped you to think, oh, my friend has got to hear this. Please share it. Share it with your friends. Leave us a message, a comment below. Remember, the heart of classical home education is not about checking boxes. It's about cultivating wisdom and virtue and wonder with your own family and trusting the Lord to lead you every step of the way. You guys keep the learning going and enjoy the journey as you go. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.